I'm Miriam Cates and this is GBN Originals. A grandmother in Stockport has been visited by police at her home for simply expressing her opinions about local politicians on social media. This is not just an isolated incident, but a symptom of a much larger problem that's eroding the foundations of our free society. Helen Jones, a 54-year-old school administrator and grandmother, found herself at the centre of this Orwellian nightmare when two plainclothes officers arrived at her home last Tuesday. Her crime? Posting on Facebook that a local Labour councillor should resign following a WhatsApp scandal that had already led to the sacking of former Health Minister Andrew Gwynn. Let's be clear about what happened here. Mr Gwynn, the MP for Gorton and Denton, was caught posting a message in a WhatsApp group saying he hoped an elderly constituent who didn't vote Labour would die before the next election. Many will argue that this kind of contemptuous attitude towards voters should be called out and challenged, and that's exactly what Mrs Jones did. In a Facebook group called For Heaton's Hub, she wrote, "Let's hope he does the decent thing and resigns. I somehow think his ego won't allow it." This is not hate speech. This is not incitement to violence. This is a citizen exercising her right to criticise her elected representatives. And for this, she had police officers showing up at her door. Mrs Jones described the experience as quite scary, saying it made her think she should just keep quiet for the rest of my life because you can't say anything these days. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the chilling effect of police overreach. It's the silencing of dissent, the suppression of free speech, and it has no place in a free and open democracy. What's particularly galling about this incident is the misallocation of police resources. Mrs Jones rightly pointed out that her neighbours had reported more serious crimes and hadn't received a visit from the police. Yet somehow the police found the time and resources to intimidate a law-abiding citizen for expressing her political views.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
This is not an isolated incident. It's part of a broader trend we're seeing across the country, where the police seem more interested in policing thought and speech than in tackling real crime. We've seen it with the arrest of street preachers, with the investigation of so-called non-crime hate incidents, and now with the intimidation of citizens criticising their elected officials. It's a dangerous path we're treading. When people fear expressing their opinions, when they self-censor to avoid a knock on the door from the police, we're no longer living in a free society. We're living in a society where the state, through its enforcement arm, is actively suppressing dissent and protecting the political class from criticism. This is not what our police force is for. The primary duty of the police is to prevent and detect crime, to keep our streets safe, to protect the vulnerable. It's not to act as the private security force for thin-skinned politicians who can't handle criticism. We need to ask ourselves some serious questions. Who complained about Mrs Jones's Facebook posts? Was it the councillor himself? If so, What does that say about the state of our democracy when elected officials use the police to silence their critics? And if it wasn't the councillor, who else has the power to set the police on citizens for their Facebook posts? Moreover, we need to examine the policies and guidelines that allow for this kind of police action. Are our laws so vague and our police so confused that they can be used as tools of political intimidation? If so, this needs to change. As a society, we must stand up for our right to free speech. We must defend the right of every citizen to criticise their elected representatives without fear of police intimidation. We must demand that our police forces focus on real crime, not on policing opinions. To Mrs. Jones and to every other citizen who has faced similar intimidation, I say this: don't be silenced. Your voice matters, your opinions matter, and your right to express those opinions is fundamental to our democracy. To the police forces across the country, please remember your duty. You are there to protect the public, not to shield politicians from mild criticism. Focus on real crime, on keeping our streets safe, on protecting the vulnerable. Leave the policing of speech to totalitarian regimes. And to any politician who thinks it's acceptable to use the police to intimidate their critics, be careful what you wish for. Free speech is the foundation of the democracy you are elected to uphold. If you can't handle criticism, if you can't engage in open debate, then perhaps rethink your suitability for public office. This incident in Stockport should be a wake-up call for all of us. Our freedoms are being eroded, not by some foreign threat, but by our own institutions. It's time we stood up and said, enough is enough. We will not be silenced. British people should not be intimidated. We must all continue to speak out, to criticise, to exercise our right to free speech. Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is what democracy looks like. That's what freedom looks like, and it's worth fighting for.
A grandmother in Greater Manchester was visited by police officers. Why? She criticised Labour politicians on Facebook.
Yep, detectives questioned the 54-year-old Helen Jones about her calls for the resignation of local councillors involved in a WhatsApp scandal. Then she received a visit from Greater Manchester Police within 2 days of the force receiving a complaint about her posts.
Good to see they have their priorities in order. Well, although officers concluded that Helen had committed no crime, she says she was intimidated into being silent online and would not post again.
And that's the point, isn't it? Just by virtue of the police turning up at your door, you're going to censor yourself. Editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, joins us now. Tom, this is a shocking story. I mean, we've seen a number of these incidents where the police rock up at people's doors, seemingly out of the blue, because of something they've posted on Facebook or Twitter.
No, it's absolutely outrageous, especially when you think about what she was visited by the police for posting. She was criticising her local Labour councillor, a gentleman by the name of David Sedgwick. She was angered by his involvement in the WhatsApp off-collar joke scandal, which claimed Andrew Gwynn, the health minister's job, a couple of weeks ago. So we're in a situation in which you can be visited by the police because you've criticised your own elected representatives on the internet. We really are in quite dangerous territory. It's worth saying that the police's deflection here is that they had already come to the conclusion that no further action was necessary, but they needed to notify her of the complaint. That just doesn't wash as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, you'd be in a situation where any kind of vexatious complaints could lead to a knock at the door. But you've already made the point there, Emily. It's purely by visiting people for what they post on the internet, you do create that chilling effect, which is why we should take cases like this so seriously.
I mean, it is pretty extraordinary. I mean, is this something that has been happening more and more? Is this the law, or is this more murky and sort of political pressure? Powerful people talking to their mates in the police to not go and rough up, but to go and intimidate people from criticising political figures?
No, it's really hard to tell, but I think what we have seen from other examples is that the police often feel under pressure to be seen to be dealing with certain types of incidents more forcefully because of who the complainant is. That could be because they're a local politician. It could also be because the complaint is being made by activist who is claiming some kind of harm. The police don't want to be seen to be not listening to, say, someone who's involved in the gender debate because they're supposedly being bombarded with abuse. There's all kinds of unfortunate political considerations which come in when the police have so much purview to police or online speech. So even in a situation in which no crime has clearly been committed, their sheer involvement becomes more politicised, brings the police more into disrepute, and chills free speech across the board in the way that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if it was one of these Labour councillors or Labour activists reporting this, then that is absolutely disgraceful. Tom Slater, thank you very much, editor of Spite Online. I mean, Keir Starmer talking about all dangerous policies of Reform UK. Perhaps he should look a little closer to home.
Yeah, I've got a theory that they go for these because they're easy.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
They didn't turn up at the violent criminals' doors because that might put them at risk.
I mean, how many stories do all of us have about pathetic police responses?
We should say the Manchester Police have released a statement. They say, we spoke to the woman for 6 minutes to advise she was the subject of a complaint of harassment and to answer any questions she may have. No further action is necessary as no crime has been committed.
Oh, good. OK, we're under a duty to inform her that she is the subject of a complaint. Genuine threats that have been made to local councillors recently have meant it is more necessary to ensure a report. So let's OK.
This is Miriam Cates. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel. And remember, use your voice, it matters.